Think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
I don't care if he's pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence together. Show me he can't do the job. And then I'll say, okay, maybe it's time to go.
Whoopi Goldberg walked in like she owned the room. But Karoline Leavitt was already seated, calm, focused, and ready to change everything. Just weeks ago, these same hosts were laughing at her name. Now, they were frozen in place, barely able to look her in the eye. The audience sensed it too. Something massive was about to go down. Karoline didn't raise her voice, didn't crack a smile. She just sat there like a storm waiting to hit. This wasn't just another segment. This was a media reckoning waiting to explode on live television. Producers had begged her team to cancel. They knew things were unraveling behind the scenes. But Karoline said no. She showed up, and the moment she stepped on that stage, the mood shifted completely. Whoopi tried to laugh it off, tossing out a weak joke about political drama, but no one laughed, not even the crew. The fake smiles collapsed, and the panic was written all over their faces. Then Joy Behar leaned in, trying to take control with that smug tone. "So, Karoline, are you just here to attack us?" she asked with a grin that couldn't hide her nerves. But Karoline didn't flinch. Instead, Karoline simply replied, "I'm here for the truth." That sentence, those 5 words, sent chills across the room.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah, I think she's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though, it's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
Joy blinked, stunned. Whoopi looked away. Sunny reached for her notes, suddenly unsure. The entire studio went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Even the audience, usually loud and reactive, was glued to the moment. Something was happening they hadn't seen before, not on this show. Karoline came prepared, not just with talking points, but with documents, dates, quotes. She wasn't here to play defense. She came to set the record straight and take down the lies. Whoopi tried to interrupt. "We've had plenty of conservatives on here," she snapped. But Karoline calmly opened her folder and replied, "And how many of them did you ambush?" The crowd gasped. Joy's mouth dropped open. Sunny shifted in her seat. The panel wasn't ready for someone who didn't crack under pressure. Karoline was locked in and fearless, and it showed. Behind the scenes, producers were scrambling. Stage managers whispered into headsets. One insider later admitted, "We knew it was going to be bad, but we didn't know it would be this bad." Then came the lawsuit mention. Karoline didn't shout it. She simply said, "And yes, legal action is underway." You could feel the blood drain from the hosts' faces. The word lawsuit echoed across the set. Sunny Hostin tried to jump in with legal spin, brushing it off as weak, but Karoline cut her off with one brutal sentence. "You might want to check the exhibits before you speak." Boom! Instant silence. Audience members gasped. Some even started clapping. No one had ever spoken to the View panel like this and gotten away with it. But Karoline wasn't just surviving. She was dominating. Joy fumbled, asking something about qualifications. But Karoline didn't miss a beat. "Funny how my credentials are questioned while you've never served a single day in government," she said, without blinking. Whoopi fired back sarcastically. "So you think you're better than us?"
You know who was ranting on social media? that no one wants to see that on his inauguration day. Sir, this was one of our presidents.
If you ever ran for president, you'd win. This is Whoopi Goldberg. You don't hear that? She said, I'm making a movie. Would you be in it? I said, in what capacity? Just a walk-on. You're so great. Would you do I did a walk-on for Whoopi Goldberg. Now she says, I refuse to mention his name. You know what? Politics can do strange things to demented people.
But Karoline didn't take the bait. No, she said sharply, I just came with the truth, and you don't like it. Producers were now in full panic mode. An assistant director could be seen motioning to cut the feed, but they were too late. The cameras were rolling. America was watching every brutal second. Karoline brought receipts. She pulled quotes from past episodes, mocking jabs, personal attacks, coordinated smears. She laid them out calmly, clearly, and without raising her voice. Each word landed like a blow. The audience was stunned, mouths open, eyes wide. The hosts sat there, suddenly quiet, trapped by the very platform they used to tear others down. Karoline wasn't rattled for a second. While the hosts scrambled for their next question, she kept her eyes forward and her tone calm. The message was clear. She wasn't here to entertain their usual circus. She was here to end it. Joy nervously reached for her coffee, her hand trembling just enough for viewers to notice. Whoopi glanced toward the camera crew like she wanted someone, anyone, to stop what was happening. But it was too late. The show had finally lost control. Then came the clips. Karoline played audio from a past episode where her name had been dragged through the mud. She let the tape speak for itself. No commentary needed. This is what you call journalism? She asked. The audience didn't clap. They stared, silent, shocked. Behind the glass, producers were yelling into headsets. Someone from legal reportedly rushed into the control room. Karoline had flipped the script, and she wasn't done yet. Sunny tried again, this time leaning into her legal background. We have First Amendment rights here, she said smugly. Karoline nodded and replied, yes, and I have the right to defend my name when you abuse yours. The crowd erupted. It wasn't just fiery, it was factual. Karoline had the law on her side, and she knew it. The paperwork was in motion, the claims were solid, and the footage didn't lie.
Now, I've hired Whoopi to work for me as a comedian before this stuff, and a long time ago, and I went. And, you know, I'm not particularly shy about what I hear. Her mouth was so foul, every word out of her mouth was like the F word, this. I was with a group of people, like sort of nice people, and we had to leave. She was so filthy dirty, disgusting, half the place left. I said I'd never hire again.
This wasn't a war of opinions. It was a reckoning built on receipts. Whoopi sighed loudly, trying to reset the energy. Look, let's not get carried away here, she muttered. But the damage was done. They were exposed, on their own stage, during their own show, and in front of their own audience. Joy looked over at Sunny, hoping for backup. But even she looked stunned. The smirks were gone. The swagger disappeared. All that was left was panic and fear, broadcast live for the whole country to see. The show was slipping through their fingers, and no one could stop it. Karoline wasn't grandstanding or yelling. She didn't need to. The power was in her quiet control, her ability to stay composed while everyone around her cracked. And then she said, the line that changed everything. You've made a career out of tearing down conservative women, she said softly. But now, you're finally facing consequences. That sentence hit like a thunderclap. Whoopi looked furious. She snapped back, that's not true. But the audience didn't believe her. The footage had already proven otherwise. The whispers across the room said it all. They knew Karoline wasn't wrong. Viewers at home couldn't believe what they were seeing. The View, long protected, long untouchable, was being dismantled on its own turf. And it wasn't just a guest doing it. It was a legal hurricane wrapped in calm delivery. By now, phones were blowing up across ABC headquarters. Executives were texting in all caps, demanding updates. "How bad is it?" one message read. The reply, "Worse than we thought." The panic wasn't just inside the studio, it was spreading through the entire company. Joy tried to steer things back to comedy, cracking a weak joke about Karoline's age. But the audience didn't laugh, not even a chuckle. That silence, it was deafening and devastating. Karoline smiled slightly.
ABC News President Kim Godwin saying in a statement, "Effective immediately, I am suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comments. While Whoopi has apologized, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments."
You know, when you're a certain age, you use words that you know from when you were a kid or you remember saying, and that's what I did today, and I shouldn't have. I should have thought about it a little longer before I said it, but I didn't.
The only time she showed any emotion during the entire segment. She wasn't shaken. She wasn't angry. She was certain. And that certainty terrified the hosts more than any outburst ever could. Then came the closing shot. Karoline turned toward the camera and said just one line before the credits rolled. "We're not done." No theatrics, no yelling, just a quiet promise that made every executive at ABC feel the floor shake under them. The View had just been shut down, not cancelled by producers, but obliterated by the one guest they never should have underestimated. And the fallout, it had only just begun. Backstage, chaos erupted. Producers were yelling over each other. Legal advisors stormed into the hallway with binders in hand, demanding immediate crisis meetings. Emails with subject lines like "urgent segment fallout" and "reputation risk" started flooding inboxes. One executive slammed a door and reportedly shouted, "We should have never let her on." But it was too late. Karoline wasn't just a guest. She was a reckoning. And she had turned their show into a courtroom, one they couldn't control. The internet was already ablaze. Clips of the confrontation hit millions of views in hours. Side-by-side comparisons flooded TikTok, showing the hosts mocking Karoline just weeks before, then trembling in silence during the segment. The contrast was brutal. Hashtags exploded. "Nah, Karoline was right." The View meltdown. Media accountability. Fans, critics, even neutral viewers were watching the drama unfold in real time, and it wasn't looking good for Whoopi or her co-hosts. ABC tried to downplay it with a short press release. "We support respectful debate." But the public wasn't buying it. Nobody forgot the smirks, the interruptions, the cheap shots. Those moments were now receipts, and they were everywhere. Whoopi was livid after the cameras cut. She stormed off set, throwing her cue cards down on the floor. "We're making her look like a hero," she reportedly screamed at staff.
Listen, take him seriously and take him literally.
I don't think that we have to. I think it would be remiss of us to not say Joe Biden knows how to do this.
Yes.
He knows how to do this. He's quite good at this. And you know, you can't refute anything with him because he just, when I say him, I mean
He rambles.
Trump.
Yeah.
He tends to just
But can I mention one thing?
The control she once had, gone in a flash. Joy Behar was overheard saying, "We built this show from nothing." Her voice cracked, not with confidence, but fear. She knew something had shifted, something they couldn't laugh away or cover with a joke. Sunny Hostin, the legal voice of the table, stayed quiet during the meltdown. She knew what the lawsuit meant. She had read the documents, and when asked if Karoline had a case, all she said was, "She has more than a case, she has evidence." Interns were crying. Producers were frantically combing through old footage to see what else might resurface. Staff members started quietly updating their resumes. No one felt safe anymore, not even the hosts. Advertisers started backing out behind the scenes. No press releases, no public drama, just quiet withdrawals and panicked phone calls. Then came the memo that shook the entire building. One internal message simply read, "The brand is compromised. Prepare contingency plans." That was it. Just one cold sentence, and it said everything. Executives called emergency meetings. Some floated the nuclear option. What if they cancelled The View entirely? What if this was the moment to pull the plug before the collapse got worse? The suggestion wasn't laughed off. It was taken seriously for the first time ever. The unthinkable had become the only option left on the table, because Karoline didn't just hit them with opinions, she hit them with consequences. Across social media, memes went wild. One showed Whoopi holding a cancelled stamp. Another had Joy Behar in a courtroom with the caption, "When the roast turns into a deposition." They were everywhere, and they weren't slowing down. Karoline, on the other hand, didn't say another word after her final comment. No tweet, no follow-up, just silence. Icy, powerful, terrifying silence.
If you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers.
That alone told America everything they needed to know. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to beg for headlines. She had delivered her message loud and clear. With one appearance, she made daytime TV history and set off a chain reaction no one could stop. By morning, every major outlet was forced to cover it, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The View was no longer entertainment. It was a media crime scene under a legal spotlight. People started asking the hard questions. How long had this behavior been allowed? How many other guests had been targeted like Karoline? How many episodes crossed the line? And how many got buried? And then came the final brutal blow. Karoline's legal team released a chilling update. Discovery is underway. We will proceed without delay. That was it. Just one line. But it landed like a hammer across ABC. This wasn't just the end of a segment. It might be the end of an era. The View, once untouchable, now sat on the edge of collapse. All because one woman refused to be silenced. Karoline Leavitt didn't just shut down a show, she ignited a movement. And as the fallout continues to build, one thing is certain. She's not done yet.